Hi, everybody. It's 5:30. We'll just give another minute or so for people to log in, and then we'll get going right away after that. So I guess we will get going, and people can join in as they arrive. If anyone is late, it's also being recorded so that we can post and put it up later. Thank you, everybody, for coming on to our town hall session for the performance program for this year. I'd like to welcome everybody on board. I am Jason Pratt. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the club manager of the Cascade Swim Club. We also have with us Dave Johnson, our director of swimming and head coach, and Wendy Johnson, our assistant head coach, as well as our club president, Kim Connell, and our COVID officer, Ella Wilson. At this time, if I could just ask, if you've not already done so, and I believe everybody is on mute, but if you could also just turn your video feed off, that will just keep the stream nice and stable for everybody as we get going here on the meeting. So there's just a couple of people. I'm just going to turn their video off for them. There we go. Okay, so the agenda for today, we're going to go through the Swimming Canada Cascade Swim Alberta Return to Swim documents, just a couple explanation points as to things that have changed. The majority of you were back in the water in the summer. There are a couple things that have changed over the course of this last little while. Just before that, we will have the coaches just speak briefly to the upcoming season and schedule. There will not be a lot of technical information at this meeting just because of while the majority of us on the call are registered, we do have some people that have not yet registered and are still making their decision on that, and so that information will come a little bit later in the next 2 weeks. We will discuss the club's Cascade COVID withdrawal procedure in the event of a provincial shutdown, and then next steps to happen before swimmers get back in the water next week. And then we'll have some time for some Q&A before we wrap it up. And we've had a few questions come into the office already. And we've also, so we've had a lot of that will get answered here throughout the session tonight. At any time, if you do have a question that pops up, you can put it into the chat, and perhaps we will answer the question throughout the course of the presentation. But if not, we'll go back to all of those questions and ensure that we have. So with that, I will first turn it over to our director of swimming, our head coach, Dave Johnson, as well as our assistant head coach, Wendy Johnson.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. This meeting is the biggest meeting we've had of all of our groups so far, which is actually a really big positive. First of all, a big welcome to all of you. And secondly, we need to reflect a little bit upon what happened last summer and sort of through that period of July and August, and recognize that we actually did a really awesome job. And when I use the we, I'm talking about the kids and slash swimmers and the parents and all of the staff to try to keep everything up and operational. And we had a lot of new ground that we covered. But now we're going into the second stage of this after a 3-week break, basically. And we're going to build up the season in a typical way that we normally would do when we're starting a new season. Part of the reason for the break between the end of the summer and now was to hit the reset button. And also, it's a typical start date for us around the middle of September. We have ample time to get ready for the performance moments in December, and then again, hopefully through April and on into the summer. Just looking at what's out there, I've been in contact with coaches not only in Canada but around the world, and the Alberta situation and the Repsol situation and the specific Cascade situation is very much on the outliers edge of the good news side of the story. There are a lot of programs and places around Canada and even in the province that are not back in the water to the degree that we're in the water. And Wendy can answer some of these questions, but when we had to put the program together, looking at training hours, looking at the guidelines around the cohorts and so on and so forth, recognizing that Repsol has some challenges around spatial distance between two different clubs or training groups and leaving buffer lanes and one thing another. We had to make some adjustments to the training schedules, but in the main, we basically got pretty much everything that we've been familiar with having, except that right at the moment, we don't have any long course time.
Well, and the space is quite reduced.
Yeah.
So we have the same hours per se, but we don't have, we rarely have a whole 8-lane, 25-meter pool to work with. We have 5 or 6 lanes most of the time. Some of the days we have 8 lanes, but not all of the days. Like when we first looked at what they gave us, it was down to between 38% and 50% of what we normally have. And that's what we started working with. So it's one reason why the schedule is a little bit late to come out, but, and they're just starting to ask for a dryland space. Like yesterday, the email came out and they kind of realized that they haven't allocated us or any of the other sport partners any dryland training space. So now they want to try to get everybody's request in, and then they're going to try to sort it out and give everybody what they can while they try to keep their distance from everybody else, the public and other sport user groups.
Yeah. So having said all of that, our plan is a typical fall plan with the caveat that competitions at this point are kind of the unplugged nature. We're going to do them in the same way that we stood the swimmers up at the end of the summer and raced in racing suits if it was applicable, and got them to stand up and hit out some performances. And if you look at Swim Swam and some of those mediums, that's what they're doing around the US and around the world. But there are areas of the world that have put competitions into place. And I've had in the last 24 hours some pretty extensive meetings with the Swim Alberta people to try to give them some ideas about how we could operationalize the competitive side of the coin. And some of the ideas might be, if you look at an 8-lane pool, for example, we would race in 3 lanes. There'd be 2 buffer lanes in the middle, and another team, call it University of Calgary or whatever, would race in the other 3 lanes. One team would stay on one side of the pool, one team would stay on the other side of the pool. All the distancing protocols would be able to be utilized. And to be honest, a lot of those sort of leaders in the sport on the management side, like at Swim Alberta, Swimming Canada, etc., they haven't wrapped their heads around the competition side of things, but they're doing it sort of as we speak. And we could expect, some challenges around that, but also we have a plan of when we're going to race, and we'll be putting that plan into place. If you do go to the Swim Alberta website and look at how we did by racing this summer and put those times up, we're pretty prominent in the results, and that's a good news story for us too. So yeah. I went on a little bit there, Jake. Sorry about that. But you're muted.
That's all fine. And yeah, I do think it's something just worth mentioning that people do need to appreciate that, you know, as an example, we got our allocation, well, the Swim Alberta revised guidelines and return to swim came out at the very end of August. Allocations for the facilities that we're using, Canyon Meadows, which doesn't really impact you, but Seton and Repsol were September confirmation of space. And so all of that comes late. And I think it's just part of what hopefully everyone here has become used to. And if not, it is at least what everyone should expect. And that's becoming a little bit more comfortable in a somewhat uncomfortable scenario where we don't have all of the answers immediately in front of us, and are doing as best as we possibly can to get them to all of our members and all of our swimmers and families as soon as we can. But some of that information does come at us quite late in the game. Which leads us into the next topic on our agenda, which is that return to swim document that we put out and that information. So there's really only one change that is significant and impactful in terms of how we operate our programs and how some of our athletes are directly impacted. The other changes really have to do with the various differences that go on between the three facilities that we use. And in the case of the performance program, it's really only the one facility, Repsol Sports Center, although from time to time you are swimming at the Seton pool. So the big change, and I will let our COVID officer expand on that, but the big change is the restriction now from Swim Alberta, which does go over and above Alberta health guidelines, but that is that swimmers may only participate in one sporting or performance cohort at any one time. So that does mean that they are swimming with Cascade. They cannot be a part of any other sport club that operates in that cohort model, which is the vast majority of them. So Ella, maybe if you'd like to maybe expand a little on that.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, everyone. Just to reiterate what Jason just said with regards to one cohort, our swim club, as far as your roster's performance, classifies itself as a cohort, which is you have direct contact with individuals up to 50 people. So we are classified as a sport cohort, and the new thing that's mandated by Swim Alberta this year is that you are only allowed to be in one sport cohort. And for the most part, the largest aspect of it, you basically can't be joining any other team per se, such as specifically something that has direct contact. That's the main points of it all. The scenarios which come into play affect mostly the younger swimmers that possibly take a single ballet lesson that is distanced, or a gymnastics class that is distanced. Those are, or there are some skating camps they call that are cohort friendly, in which there is no direct contact, and that's the main concept of it. So if you basically can't join anything else in which you have direct contact with someone else, but please contact me directly if there is something you are doing or taking, because sometimes it's a case-by-case scenario, but direct contact is the main thing. It doesn't really come into impact with school sports this year because most schools have removed it out of the curriculum for now, but they would also be classified as a separate cohort because they would have contact. And that will also, for those who are used to the daily screening forms that we use in the summertime, that's going to be a new question on there that's to answer daily is, are you participating in only one sport cohort?
Great. Thanks, Ella. And we have had questions regarding the need for our members to be doing the screening questionnaires on a daily basis. And the rationale behind it is much like the era that we find ourselves in now, which is living with COVID, is to do our part. And that is in the event that we do have any issues that come up, and we need to be able to get a hold of everybody who is inside the cohort and pass that information through to Alberta Health, and that we can do it in a quick and efficient manner. And so that is why you're asked to do that every single day, so that we know at what time who was in the pool in and amongst that cohort every single day. So that is the big change. Some of the subtle changes that between facilities really have to do with locker room and ingress and egress. So going in and going out of the building. There is a change coming for the Repsol Sports Center. Whether or not that happens for your first practice back next week, I will have to confirm that, but there will be new entrances into the building, and that will be the north main entrance, which is the it's not the end with the roundabout, which a lot of people enter the building, but it is the opposite end. And there will be facilities set up there, temporary facilities set up there for changing, and you'll be accessing the pool deck through the stairwell behind the diving area. So when that change is implemented, we will let you know, but they are setting up an area in particular for our swimmers to be able to get themselves changed and off to school without having to leave in their wet gear, which is the way that it was operating in the summer for those of you that were participating in the summer. Temporary showers access is on the pool deck behind the dive towers and by the hot tub, and that is where swimmers after practice will be able to use the shower facilities. And then it would be up the stairs behind the dive tank for the temporary area that will be used for locker rooms for the sport partners. So as soon as that becomes available and that becomes the standard operating procedure, we will let everybody know. The other smaller difference for when you are at Seton currently, there is full locker room access at the Seton Brooksfield YMCA. So swimmers will be able to use it on the way in, they'll be able to use the showers, and they'll be able to use it on the way out. And that really just has to do with available space. It's a brand new facility. It's built to accommodate an awful lot of people, and there is room there so that they feel it's safe that all the athletes could use the locker rooms when you were at the YMCA, the Seton pool. So those are really the only changes of note that kind of impact our athletes going forward here in the fall. There is the potential that the Swim Alberta Return to Swimming in-person training document will change again this month. When it does change, obviously it will affect our document, and we will make necessary revisions and let everybody know. But the expectation is that it's going to change in the fall, and we'll let you know what those changes are and how they impact our athletes when they do. And Ella, did I miss anything in there? And you can just jump in if I did regarding the return to swim in the documents. I think that was everything, correct, Ella? Yep. Okay. So the next piece is the Cascade COVID withdrawal procedure. In the event of a provincial shutdown, much like we ran into in the spring in mid-March, which essentially carried through in some way, shape, or form through till May and June before we kind of reached the level of activity where we are at now. While none of us have a crystal ball, we do kind of feel it's an unlikely scenario that we're going to find ourselves back in that same type of a setting. We don't know. All of the language coming out of the provincial government as well as the federal government is not so much squashing this pandemic the same way that they had used that language in the spring, but more about how do we live with this until we can find a vaccine and not have to worry. So Again, the expectation is that it won't happen, but in the event that it does, we have a procedure for that. And again, this is the Cascade COVID withdrawal procedure. Our current withdrawal procedures are in place. So at any time, and just to recap, if a member wishes to withdraw, again, we have our non-refundable fees, and then there's a formula that is listed on our website, and you can do that up until and before the 1st of April. The Cascade COVID withdrawal procedure, though, is something different. And so in the event of a provincial-wide shutdown, there would be a few things that happen. Immediately, we would revert to dry land and remote training. So remote training, a combination of online and self-directed, the same way we did in the spring months. And that would start, as I said, immediately and carry through till 14 days. After the 14-day period, if it does look like the shutdown will extend, we will be giving our members options so that they can continue with the remote and online dryland training, or at the 30-day mark, they can choose to withdraw from the program. In the event that you would not choose to continue with remote training, but would choose the withdrawal, there is 25% of your fees are non-refundable, but that other 75% of the year's membership fees are refundable on a prorated basis based on, you know, how many months we ended up swimming and a September to June season. So that document is something we're communicating to all of our members, and then we will put it up, and we've been communicating that through these town hall meetings, and we'll be putting it up online on our website under our other policies and procedures very shortly. A scenario related to that, but not necessarily a part of a total shutdown, is what is the procedure in place when we have a positive test result in the program. So we have some other procedures and some guidelines from Alberta Health as they relate to you know, whether you stay home, whether you isolate, whether you go get tested, so on and so forth. But this is if you've shown symptoms, you've been suggested to go and get tested, and you have a positive result. So unless there are any other health conditions preventing anything different, you would revert immediately to remote and dryland training throughout the period of your isolation. This would be coach directed, and there would be a coach assigned to put that programming in place and monitor it for you while you have to isolate. And in that time, when your isolation is over, you've had a negative test, you come back to the pool. The scenario would be the same if Alberta Health determines that, based on the result of a single athlete testing positive, if that lane, the athletes nearest to the positive test, also have to isolate, they would basically be following that same procedure where they have a coach assigned, and they would do the remote and the online training throughout the duration of their isolation again until their isolation period is over, they're symptom free, and then they have a negative test result. It is possible, and we're looking to the schools and how they are dealing with it, that a positive test result could impact a full group or a full cohort. We won't know that answer until, unfortunately, we run into that particular case, and then we get direction from Alberta Health. But it would be the same. It would result in basically the same procedure where the entire group, let's say senior performance, junior performance, or some smaller component that Alberta Health has determined, they would revert to our default, which is going to be the remote dryland training throughout the duration of the isolation. And again, everybody at that point would need to be symptom-free, have a negative test result, and then they would be back inside the court and we resume training. The steps next before our athletes can get back into the water. And what needs to happen is obviously, and I believe the vast majority of you already done this. Some of you potentially may not, but first and foremost, you need to be registered with Cascade. And then what we need to do is we need to register you as an athlete with Swimming Canada and Swim Alberta. The Swim Alberta assumption of risk and liability waivers are all done as a part of an automated process this fall with that Swimming Canada, Swim Alberta registration. That has to take place before your swimmers can get back into the pool. So if you, again, have maybe just been slow with your registration, you do need to get that done quite soon, because your registration and getting your athlete back into the pool is held up by that process until we have you registered and you've signed off on the waivers and assumption of risk through Swim Alberta. That is a manual process. We need to take your registration from us. We need to go to the Swimming Canada registration page, turn on an activation, and then you get your email, you follow your steps and verify your information, and also sign this liability and assumption of risk form, and then you're cleared to swim. So those are the steps to take for all of our members. And again, if you've not already done it, but are intending to, you really need to get that done right away. For those of you that registered prior to Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, give or take, you should have all by now received your Swimming Canada registration email that comes from registrations@swimming.ca. If you registered with the club, as I said, prior to that time, and you've not yet received that email, please check your spam or your junk folder. And if it's still not there, contact the office. And people who have registered after that point would have also received their email, but the first batch of them all went out yesterday midday. And so, as I said, if you're registered already, unless you just registered within the last hour or so, you probably already have that email. And if you don't see it very shortly, then contact the club office so we make sure that we can get that set up for you. So I'll just take a look at the questions that are in the chat. And if you, we'll just make sure we ask these. Must swimmers get a second test after 10 days of isolation? No, and either I misspoke if I said that, or perhaps you misheard. 10 days. My apologies. So I believe that yes, a negative test result is needed before you can come back into the program. So, and if Chris, if you want to unmute to maybe clarify if I'm not reading this properly, but if you test positive, you need to get a negative test, excuse me, before you can come back. You don't need 2 negative tests. You just need a negative test. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Ella, but I believe that's the case.
My question was just, it sounded from your wording like you needed, like after you tested positive, after 10 days, you needed a second test indicating
You do not.
negative. I just wanted to
You
clarify.
don't. Nope. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Ella.
Question from the Tevlins, registered but Swim Canada is slow responding. I guess it would depend on when it was that you did your registration. And if you've done your registration, as I said, if it was prior to as late as this afternoon, and Kara, feel free to message everyone if I am incorrect, then you've probably already got that Swimming Canada email, but
yeah, as soon as you get the email from Swim Canada, you log in, you complete your waiver, and then make sure that you go to the account detail page, double check everything there, and then really important, click that confirm and submit information button. Once you've done that, we get a notification that says you've completed your waiver and you're good to go. There's no additional approval needed from Swimming Canada once you've confirmed your account and completed that waiver.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know, Shane, when it was that you did the registration, but you, as I said, if it was earlier than this afternoon, you probably should have got that email. If you don't have that email, as I said, take a look in your junk, take a look in your spam. If it's still not there, send Kara a note at office, and we will. I mean, it will be. It won't be impossible, but the that can let them in. So it's not like it's impossible, but it will be challenged. I don't know, Wendy or Dave, did you want to speak at all to that point about swimmers coming in late for practices?
Yeah, we're gonna still have to figure it out, because that scenario that you described earlier, coming through the north entrance, coming down the staircase by the dive tank, that's one of their options that they've just thrown out to us yesterday, and they're looking for other ideas that might be a little bit more creative or workable. For us to have people arriving late, we can't just keep sending it's understandable if the train stops and you're on it, or a traffic accident or weather related or school related, and you're just stuck and you're late. Of course, we want you to come to practice. We just have to find out what the options are for those odd times that we might have somebody coming late. We have thought about their proposal, and we have some ideas that we can throw back at them, but we probably won't have the final answers before Monday, and we're back as a group on Tuesday. So we're kind of hoping that we have some idea of what to do, but obviously the case is made to try to be on time, and to be on time to start work out on time. And perhaps a parent might be involved every day, like a soccer parent might be a soccer parent on the bench every day. They have to have somebody, and we might have to have a parent involved every day to man the gate and stuff like that. So we'll have to talk about it, but it's not for sure what the options are if you're arriving late.
Yeah, and so that, and to answer your question, Lindy, it is the same type of questions. Essentially, they're going to have to get everybody to the pool, collected kind of at a singular time, because again, the door, whether it ends up being that north entrance, main entrance door, or one of the side doors like it was the emergency exit doors in the summer, it is only the coach of those athletes that can let them in. So that, again, ideally everybody's going to be there at the same time, so they can all be let into the building at the same time. That is currently what the procedure looks like. Oh, I don't know if I was freezing up, so I don't know if you missed that or not, but
when you started the conversation about being late, you were frozen, but I think that we've gone over it all.
Yeah, okay, that's good then. Yeah, sure.
What's Lindy's question about 15 minutes before? Yeah, like Repsol in the summertime had said that it would be possible to have a different person at the gate other than a coach, or at the door other than a coach, and it just might be that that's what we have to do. So
yeah, literally we were talking about it today because we saw that memo today, and they're being pretty fluid and looking for some other ways or alternatives. They're just trying to address the issue of the locker rooms and the issue of the ingress and egress. And I think you just got to know that it's going to be a fluid situation, and we're going to be working on it and try and make it happen in the best possible way, right? We know that there's always going to be the inadvertent circumstance. It's just when you're, late because you stopped for a Slurpee that maybe that's not such a good idea. So, although I like Slurpees,
So, yeah, I mean, the challenge is it is going to be dependent on where those entrances finally end up being, and they're trying to do it. And their rationale for the suggestion of that north front entrance is really about they can have ingress and egress changing facilities there in the space that sort of requires. Sort of the rationale there. Whether if that's where it ends up being, or if it's someplace else, we'll have to look at that. And we potentially, as Wendy was saying, and we've got in here, we may be having to look for some parents who have the ability to volunteer time to, be there 15 minutes prior to practice and 15 minutes after it starts to potentially help with the door. Because as Wendy said, it's not really practical for the coaches to be constantly running up and down off the deck to let swimmers in. So. And certainly we will, if that ends up being the route that we go, absolutely, we'll reach out to everybody. It's nice to see that we've got a few people that think they could volunteer to help with that, and that would be fantastic. So it would also be great if, the reps all could, as Wendy said, be a little bit more creative in terms of how the athletes can come and go into the pool. I do understand that they're trying to keep, just because all of the swim teams and other sport partners are there in a very tight amount of time, essentially between 4 and 7 p.m. They're just trying to keep everybody from crowding that front and main entrance all at the same time. So, do we have any other questions just regarding the registration? I see, Shane, it looks like you did manage to find your Swimming Canada registration, so that's great. Really, if you're on the call as registered, then you probably should have that email. If it was just a late registration tonight or this afternoon, it may not be there yet, but we will be sending out, if we do have registrations over the weekend, we'll be sending out that Swimming Canada registration to everybody on Monday morning, which is the next batch of registrations that the club will be doing with Swim Alberta and Swimming Canada. And then you'll just have to make sure that you do that very quickly in time for Tuesday's practice, which is the first practice back for the performance program. Just looking if we have any more questions here.
Oh, well, we're looking forward to seeing everybody again, and healthy and strong and taller and, looking good and fit. So if you haven't managed to find some kind of activity, get going on it today, tomorrow, and the next day.
Okay. So I'm not seeing too many other questions come in here. Is there anything further from anyone else that they're looking for clarification for or from clarification on as we?
I think, Jason, we can talk a little bit about the senior performance group had only like 5 or 6 lanes offered to us at 4 o'clock or 3:30 start, a couple of days a week. And we took a decision to start a group one day at 2:30 and one day at 2 o'clock to just try to alleviate some of the pressures of swimming those senior kids in 5 or 6 people per lane. And so in order for us to run a really good practice, we can divide them up somehow. We offered it to a group A, and not all those people in group A can make it at that early time, which is to be expected. But there were some people in group B that indicated they're available and willing to come at the early time. So we're quite willing to entertain requests, but It can't be you just show up whenever you want. We need to be able to plan for certain numbers of people and have those people in certain lanes with their designated lane swimmers. So we'll have to know if you wanted to come at the early time and you're available to come at the early time basically all the time, then we'll put you in for that. And if you can come at the later time, we'll put you in for that, and we'll have a designated lane for you to train in. Any questions on that from anyone?
No, we just had a question about bags.
I had a question on that.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I was just going to ask on that swimming on the Group A and Group B, there's no concerns with going back and forth between Group A and B as far as cohorts? Or would you just keep those swimmers consistently together? Like if you swim in Group B, because you can't make that earlier time in Group A work, does that mean you have to stay with that group for all the swims then?
No.
Okay.
No. It's just for those two practices. So when we make the lanes that will include Group A and Group B all together, we'll make sure that we'll make their training lanes appropriately so that when they're not together, they're still with the same people. Do you understand? So if you have lane 3 at 2 o'clock may only have 2 people, and at 4 o'clock may only have 2 people, but when they're all together, they'll be the same people in the same lanes. We just have to do some juggling around with the.
Yeah, and just so for Gord, the cohort is the senior performance program, that 30 kids, like that is the cohort. They may train sometimes separately from each other, but it is the full senior performance program that is a cohort in and of itself.
Oh, perfect.
So,
That helps, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
And then someone was asking about the locker. We'll have the locker accessible to us. Most of our practices, except for one, is all in the west pool, where the big windows are in the foundation pool. So we're kind of back in our home pool. And but the concern is that when we walk in the north entrance, it's quite a hike to get to the pool, especially if you're going to come in the entrance, have to get changed, maybe wait for a tent facility to open up for you to get changed, and then to make your way down onto the pool deck on time. So that's kind of a concern. That's why the coaches can't just leave the west pool deck and run up to the north pool entrance in a minute or 30 seconds. It's going to take longer than that. So
We'll solve the problem. We're not, all of this stuff came to us and they're not 100% sort of on exactly how it's going to work, but I think, come to the pool and we'll figure it out. We don't even know what those locker rooms are going to look like. So, we have to kind of see the landscape before we can figure out how to make it work. And,
Right.
Obviously as the weather changes, it gets a little more complicated, but you guys are resourceful and innovative and creative, as are we, and we'll figure it out. So.
Question regarding with Coach Mandy gone, are we looking for additional coaches? And so, we're always looking to staff based on what the needs of the group happen to be, based on who is in the water. So I don't know, Dave, if you would like maybe if you want to address that any further, or if that's sufficient, but it's basically, if we feel like we have a need for more coaches, then we will be putting them on to the pool deck. Part of our challenge is, as of just a couple days ago, there was only 20 people registered in the performance program. It's quite a few more now, but as we said, we're looking to staff based on the number of kids and the kids themselves that we have in the pool.
And then there's a question there about junior performance, if they have an option for different time for training. Not at this time. The allotted times are what we were given. and we tried to accommodate everybody in the lane space that they gave us. And so it's a slightly different. The boys are right at the moment scheduled for 6 training sessions per week when we get up to full schedule on the 3rd or 4th week. And the girls are scheduled for 7, but the hours of swimming should be basically the same. And then we'll see how that works. If we want to combine a couple of groups after that, groups in that same junior performance group, we can do that because they're the one cohort. We just can't have the junior performance group because they're available coming swimming at 2 o'clock with the senior performance, because that's mixing 2 cohorts, and that's not what we're allowed to do. Is there a cap of number per swimmers per lane? It's supposed to be 40 swimmers in a 8-lane 25-meter pool. That's their Repsol's cap. And we don't have any of our groups that are more than 40. We don't have any of our groups that are more than 32. So we don't have a problem. If we only have 5 or 6 lanes, it's because public has the other 1 or 2 lanes, and there's a buffer lane, and public are only allowed 1 person per lane. So there's really no danger to go over that 40 per pool. And we could put 10 in a lane if we wanted to and 2 in another lane, but we're just trying to get the numbers reasonable so we can have really good practices. Are these the scheduled times for the practice? No, this is, well, it's pretty much the bare bones of what we're going to work with for the rest of the season, but we might add, we might extend the Saturday practice for everybody till 8:15, because that's when our pool time goes to, but the last 45 minutes, I think, of the junior performance time is only 4 lanes. So to put 32 kids in 4 lanes, we might have it work for us depending on what we want to accomplish in that workout. But the start times are pretty much the same start times for the short course season. That's how they've divided it up so far, the short course season. And they don't have, right at the moment, any 50-meter training space available to us. And that's why we've been looking at perhaps going to Seton Pool for our junior performance and senior performance once or twice a week if it works out.
Because they're willing to let us have 50-meter space, whereas Repsol aren't able to wrap their head around that just yet. I mean, the bottom line is that this is the starting point. In a perfect world, we can get back to what have been our traditional sort of weekly microcycle of training time and duration, including dryland. But as Wendy said earlier in this call, we just got some information from them on what would be possible around the dryland, and we're going to have a dryland program. We're just not quite sure whether some of it is in the facility, some of it is Zoom, some of it is going to have to be going into an area that we haven't explored just yet. So that's just the way the world is. It's kind of like everybody is unplugged, and we're trying to figure out what the next steps are. I mean, I like it. I think it's really good, and I think the kids are going to have really good programming because we were able to space the swimmers out, as Wendy mentioned, so that no one training group is actually overloaded. That's not the same situation for many programs, but that was the underpinning of what we were trying to do. We'd rather have high quality space and availability of lanes than overcrowding it and having a lousy workout. So that was what underpinned the decisions that we made.
And I'll just add to that and just go back to a comment that Coach Dave made earlier at the presentation is as challenging as the spacing is and the allocation and some of the slight changes that we've had to adapt to. When you look across the country and what is going on, we're very fortunate in Alberta and even more so in Calgary. Programs in Victoria are only allocating 2 practices a week of 90 minutes for their entire program. And, having to live with that, Saskatchewan is swimming 1 per lane. the Edmonton Keano Swim Club has not been given their full allocation. Teams in Ontario are being asked to train at 8:30 p.m. after center training so that they can get some space. And the Maritimes don't have all of their facilities open because of the population and problems just being able to afford to run them. So, as imperfect as potentially, it could be, or in some cases it looks like, we're pretty lucky here in Calgary, and pretty lucky that we have a great relationship at the Repsol Sports Center. We have a really good relationship at Canyon Meadows and at Seton. And we've been able to kind of negotiate and work quite well with them and our partners to get the space that we did. And so, will this run all year? It's going to run for the foreseeable future this way. And it will likely change as the situation in the country and in the province changes. But for the time being, and as I said, into the foreseeable future, this is the way that program will be running. So I'm not seeing any more questions, and I think that we've addressed most things. Is there anything else that, as we get ready to wrap up, we're really trying to keep to that hour and not go over? We still have a few minutes, but is there anything else that people are looking to have answered before everyone gets in the pool next week? Okay, well, it doesn't look like there is. So if anything comes up in your particular situation, or you have any questions prior to next week, if they're COVID related, please email Ella Wilson at cascade.covid19@gmail.com. If it's something more technical in nature regarding the swim or the dry land, those questions really should go to your coaches, Dave or Wendy. And if it's anything administrative in nature, you can email the office and we'd be happy to answer that. We want to make sure that everybody has a clear understanding of how things are working this year and the direction the program is going. And with all that, thank you very much to all of our parents and swimmers and the staff. As David mentioned earlier, we brought back 230 of the 270 competitive swimmers that we invited to swim last summer, which, when you look at the width and the breadth of our organization, more so than any other swimming program in the entire country of Canada, Cascade had a huge footprint back in the pool throughout the summer. And that really is a credit to your swimmers and you working as parents with your athletes to ensure they're staying safe and staying healthy outside the pool, as well as all to the measures that the staff put in place, and your coaches keeping your swimmers following all of those procedures. So thank you very much for that. I know we have some challenges in front of us with people going back to school. You're seeing little hot spots and little flare-ups at these high schools. That's completely expected, and it won't be a surprise to me, certainly, and probably to any of you, if we do get a few cases inside of our organization and have to react to that. But we've put measures in place to do that if it does happen, and we'll do our best in the meantime to mitigate the chance of that happening. And just look forward to having a great season in whatever way, shape, or form that it plays itself out in the next few weeks, couple months, and then into the new year. So with that, unless there are any final questions or comments, I think we'll wrap up our session, and this will be available in a day or two in case there's someone in the performance program that that was intending but couldn't be here, or if you have a question that you're looking for an answer, you can go and you can take a look. This will be up on our YouTube page in a day or so. So, okay, well, appreciate that. So thank you very much, guys. Get outside, enjoy that last day or so of warm weather before winter hits in the middle of September, and we'll talk to you all later. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks, guys, for coming.
Bye.